Hi everyone and welcome to episode 2 of That's My Drink. So, as promised last week, this one's going to be a closer look at sweet. It was going to just be one video, but I'm actually going to stretch it over two. What's the easiest way of adding sweet to a cocktail? Well, we had a look at that last week, the basic sugar syrup. But what other ways can we play with sweet? Like a sugar syrup is not the only thing we can do. Firstly, you have different sugar variants. So most syrups will use white sugar, but you can mess around with a different type of sugar if you want. White sugar doesn't impart much flavour, so it's pretty much there just to balance out the sour component in your drink. If you'd use brown sugar, you can actually import a bit of different type of flavour into it. So brown sugar is actually just white sugar with a bit of molasses added in. This, first things first, will give the syrup a much darker colour, but also like a richer flavour. So you can use these 5 flavours to pair with the base spirit that you've already got. So if you're using more of a darker, richer spirit, you can use a darker, richer sugar to complement that flavour. So the Demerara sugar I made last week is very dark. So it's very dark, very rich. So I'd be more tempted to use that in like kind of an old-fashioned, whereas I'd probably use the lighter sugar syrup in the daiquiri that I kept going on about last week. What I would say is have a little play around, see what you like. The 2-to-1 weight ratio will work for all types of sugar syrup, and just have a play around. Try one cocktail with the Demerara sugar and then try it again with the white sugar syrup and see what happens. You can also have a little play around with blending different types of sugar together. So you can do maybe you find that your perfect old-fashioned syrup is actually 60% Demerara and 40% white sugar. But is sugar really the only sweet you can add to a cocktail? What about honey, agave syrup, maple syrup? These are all sweeteners and make fantastic addition to cocktails. On top of bringing different flavour profiles to your drink, they may play into an overall theme or idea you have in mind. I've made Canadian old fashions using WhistlePig rye and maple syrup, and there's also little things like using agave in margaritas and palomas. They all play in together and help develop a concept around your drink. There's another reason why you might want to use alternative sweeteners. These different forms of sweeteners can actually contain different structures of sugar, and these different structures affect the way you perceive sweetness. So white sugar you buy from the shop is actually entirely made up of sucrose. So sucrose is really high in sweetness intensity and lasts a a moderate amount of time. However, honey and fruits contain high levels of fructose. So fructose is even sweeter than sucrose, but the length of time it lasts for is nowhere near as long. And then also another one we may know of is glucose. So it's really commonly found in dried fruits, and it can be found in some store-bought juices just due to the treatments they go through. These glucose is nowhere near as intense as sucrose or fructose, but it actually lasts a lot longer. And finally, the last 2 types of sugar I'm going to talk about are lactose and maltose. So these are nowhere near as sweet. The intensity of sweetness compared to glucose, sucrose, and fructose is a lot less, but these last easily twice as long. Maltose is found in things like seeds, beers, and molasses, and it's a result of starch breaking down in seeds during germination. So think of things like beer, whiskey, that have all started with levels of maltose in from the malting process. Lactose obviously is found in dairy and is known for more providing a creamy sensation in the mouth as opposed to out and out sweetness. Last week I showed you how to make a bog standard 2-to-1 sugar syrup. This week I'm going to build on that and begin to introduce making your own flavoured syrups. We'll cover just one method though today, which is using heat. We'll go into cold recipes, cold processes next week, which is why it's split over 2, because otherwise this video would be mammoth and none of you would want to watch it. Flavoured syrup is probably the easiest way to personalise your favourite classic. This way you can bring another flavour to it that you think might work well, or just something you really like. So you think of strawberry daiquiris, passion fruit mojitos. These are great ways to personalise a cocktail, or you can even use it to make your own complete bespoke recipe, which is where we're trying to get to. What I've actually gone for is to make a raspberry syrup with you guys, because raspberries are used quite often, muddled into classic cocktails, and an easier way of bringing that sweet raspberry flavour to it would be just to make a raspberry syrup. So I'm going to show you how to make one of those. So for raspberry syrup, you're going to need raspberries, caster sugar, and then in the pan over here I've already got some water boiling away. Then for equipment, you also need a saucepan. You've got a wooden spoon to stir it with, a funnel and muslin cloth for straining, and then something to strain it into. So as for weights, when it comes to this kind of syrup, you obviously have the 2-to-1 sugar to water, but also for the fruit we need another 2 parts. So overall it becomes 2, 2, and 1. First, you really want to make sure your water gets up to the boil, and then add your caster sugar straight into the pan. I like to add the sugar first, just so I can ensure it's fully dissolved before I add any fruit. If you just give it a little stir with a slight addition of heat, it should be fine, dissolve quite quickly. But the main thing is to ensure that it doesn't get right up to the boil, because then you could burn the sugar. So once all the sugar's gone, you can add your raspberries straight in. With most fruit, you want to cut it up, but because raspberries are quite small anyway and they break apart quite easy, the addition of heat is all it really needs. The next step is just to really make sure that obviously you don't let it boil, it needs to keep simmering, and that you just keep stirring it, just keep an eye on it. Over the next 10 minutes or so, it'll simmer away and that'll extract all that lovely raspberry flavour from the fruit. So once it's been on the hob for around 10 minutes, all you really need to do is just take it off and leave it to cool. This sort of cooling period will extract a little bit of extra flavour from the fruit and also make it a hell of a lot easier for you to strain it out into your jar, because you don't really want to burn yourself with that scalding hot fruit. So about an hour later, it should be roughly cool enough. Even if it's not completely cold, it'll be cold enough to handle. Next bit is really just to strain out the solids. So take whatever clean vessel you've got, put your funnel and this muslin cloth. This stuff's great. It fills out loads of really small particles and it also is reusable and rewashable. You want to keep it double folded just to make sure that you get absolutely everything. And then it's just a case of pouring it in. I've only made a small amount because I'm only doing enough for this video and cocktail we're making next. But the glory of ratios, you can just scale it up if you want to. This shouldn't take too long to strain through. It's coming through quite slowly, but there's lots of solids. About 15 minutes or so. If you just leave it, it'll be fine. And if you're a bit impatient, you can just pick the whole thing up and squeeze it. So then once you finish straining, you end up with a lovely little raspberry syrup. So what I'd recommend you get in a habit of doing is obviously labelling up what it is, and also putting a date on it. This will last for about 2 weeks before it will start to go bad. Personally, in my opinion, I would check it from pretty much a week after you finish using it. It does depend on little things like the temperature of your fridge, how often you open and close your fridge, stuff like how long it lasts. If you're worried about it lasting, you're not going to get it done within 2 weeks, I would add just a tiny little bit of vodka to it, like maybe like 5% of the total weight of vodka to it. It will extend the life without altering the flavour. Now I've shown you how to make a syrup, might as well show you how to make a cocktail with it. So I'm just going for a classic for now. We will move into making, so I'll do some of my own like bespoke recipes, but I quite like this classic and I feel in the mood for it. So it's a Clover Club. And then it's a shaken cocktail. So we'll start with the gin. 50 mils. Then you want 20 ml of your dry vermouth. Then 20 ml of your high quality raspberry syrup. 20 ml of freshly squeezed lemon juice. And then the 1 egg white. Egg white goes in just as a foaming agent that adds a bit more texture and thickness to the cocktail. We will go through texture at some point, but because of the egg white in there, we want to give it a good dry shake first. So without the ice, nice and hard shake. Then add the ice in. And then 10 seconds. That's all you need to chill a cocktail when you're shaking it. This cocktail served in a coupe. So you double strain this. I haven't got an actual double strainer, but it's a homemade video, so we make do what we've got at home. So I've got a sieve. And then last but no means least, the most important bit, matrix of that is the garnish. So I've just got a couple of raspberries that I left over, put a little slit in it, stick it on the end. There we are, Clover Club. Thanks for tuning in again this week, guys. Next week we'll go into cold processed sugar syrups and how to get the best, most fresh flavour of your fruits and herbs in. Cheers!